The man said loudly enough for those nearby to hear, "That car is worth more than your life." His friends chuckled behind their champagne glasses. Malik didn't react. He stood silently near the velvet rope, hands in his pockets, simply admiring the smooth gray coat of the Rolls-Royce. Surrounded by millionaires in suits and luxury watches, his presence alone felt like a challenge to someone who couldn't handle it. Have you ever been in a situation like that? Or seen someone hated not for doing anything wrong, but just for staying calm while being disrespected? Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. Malik Barnes walked into Sterling Auto with one purpose: to find a reliable car. Nothing flashy, nothing new, just a decent used vehicle to replace his old Civic that had finally given out last week. He came alone, wearing a gray hoodie, clean jeans, and holding a pale yellow folder tucked under his arm. The dealership had good reviews, and he had already spotted a solid 2013 Corolla online. His financing was pre-approved. All that was left was to sign the papers and drive away. But as he stepped onto the polished showroom floor, Malik's eyes were suddenly drawn in. At the far end of the room, beyond the red velvet ropes and gleaming signs, sat a lineup of cars that looked like they belonged on another planet: a blazing orange Lamborghini Urus, a jet-black Rolls-Royce Ghost, and in the center, like a jewel in a crown, a silver Bugatti Chiron, its engine humming softly as it was being prepped for display. Above it, a sign read, "Sterling Elite Launch, Ultra Luxury Collection, today only." Malik paused for a moment, not long, just to admire the engineering beauty, the precision. He didn't take out his phone, didn't ask any questions. He just stood there for a few seconds, taking it in. The glass sliding doors opened, and in walked a man who looked like money had raised him from the cradle. A perfectly tailored blue blazer, gold cufflinks, slick back hair, and loafers so clean they'd never touched a dusty road. His name was Preston. You didn't need anyone to say it, it was written in the way he carried himself. He entered as if the room belonged to him, as if the velvet ropes were there to keep others out of his world. Two friends flanked him, smirking confidently with champagne glasses in hand. They were there for the luxury launch party, invite only. And then Preston saw Malik. His smile faltered. Because Malik wasn't wearing a Rolex, wasn't standing with a sales associate, wasn't holding a glass of champagne. Malik was just standing there. "Keep dreaming, buddy," Preston said loudly, stepping closer, making sure the staff could hear. "Bugattis don't come with monthly payments." Malik simply turned slightly, offered a faint smile, and walked away. No response. No need to prove anything. He quietly returned to the front desk, where a young salesman named Kevin was preparing the paperwork for his Corolla. Kevin stood blinking. The smirk on Preston's face disappeared. This time, his friends didn't laugh, because Malik didn't react the way Preston had expected. And some people, they just can't stand it when they fail to intimidate you. Preston stared at Malik like he was trying to solve a problem he didn't understand. Then something switched in his head. He didn't want Malik gone because he touched something. He wanted him gone because Malik didn't bow. He leaned toward a nearby staff member, subtly gesturing toward Malik. "Hey, maybe keep an eye on that guy," he muttered. "Been circling those cars a bit too long." The staffer hesitated, then nodded. Preston stayed put, sipping his champagne with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He didn't move from his place near the velvet rope, he just kept watching Malik like he was a situation that needed managing. And Malik? He calmly continued reviewing paperwork with Kevin, the young salesman. No whispering, no glancing at the luxury section anymore. Just focus, answering questions, handing over documents, signing each page. But to Preston, that still wasn't enough. He leaned against the champagne table, nodded once more toward Malik, and muttered to another passing employee. "Seriously, anyone can just wander in here now? I thought this was a luxury car launch, not some public street fair." The employee, young and clearly unsure, just gave an awkward smile and said nothing. That's when Preston raised his voice, calling out toward the front desk. "Can someone get the manager out here for me?" Loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. The receptionist looked surprised but picked up the phone. Malik heard it. Kevin did too. But Malik didn't look back. He kept signing. Just minutes later, the manager stepped out, walking briskly and scanning the room like someone had pulled a silent alarm. His name tag read, Daniel, Executive Director. Crisp haircut, pressed white shirt, cufflinks, the kind of man who always smiled with his teeth, but never with his eyes. Preston didn't hesitate. Perfect, you're here, he said, raising his glass and gesturing toward Malik. That man's been lingering around the display area. Makes me and my friends uncomfortable. I'm not sure what his intentions are, but it's clearly unsettling for some of your other guests. Daniel followed Preston's gaze, no questions, no fact-checking, just a slight nod before heading straight toward the desk where Kevin and Malik were standing. Kevin straightened up immediately. Hi, Daniel, he said, trying to sound cheerful. We're just finalizing the paperwork for the Corolla. Mind if I speak to your customer for a moment? Daniel asked, his eyes fixed on Malik. Malik slowly turned and looked Daniel straight in the face. Is there a problem? Daniel offered a polite smile. Not exactly. I just wanted to remind all our guests today that the luxury car showcase is for premium invitees only. We ask everyone to remain in the designated areas. Kevin, clearly uneasy, jumped in. But he wasn't touring or anything. He's just here to buy a car. Daniel continued unfazed. Someone mentioned he was wandering around the showcase area. It's the VIP section. We just want to ensure everyone here feels safe and respected. Malik raised an eyebrow. Safe? He glanced at Preston, who now pretended not to hear, though his face remained turned toward them. I didn't cross any ropes. I looked at a few cars, then came back here to finish my paperwork. Malik held Daniel's gaze a moment longer, then gave a calm nod. I know exactly what this is. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He didn't react the way they expected. He simply turned to Kevin. Shall we continue? Kevin nodded, resuming the process, though slower now, his hands slightly trembling. Daniel lingered a moment, then walked away. But his tone hung heavy in the air. And Preston? He smiled. He had gotten what he wanted, attention, suspicion, control. But something about Malik still frustrated him. Because even when he was called out, treated like a threat in the middle of a luxury showroom, Malik didn't break. Preston was losing patience. He had tried everything to provoke Malik, mocking him, accusing him, sending the manager to intervene. But nothing rattled Malik. Malik was still there, calm, seated. And it was that very calmness that was driving Preston insane. On the far side of the room, the luxury car launch event carried on, glasses clinking, cameras flashing, laughter echoing beneath the elegant vaulted ceiling. Executives boasted about Lamborghinis like they were trophies. And Malik? He still sat with Kevin at the small desk, reviewing loan documents, his IDs neatly placed beside him. Just waiting for the final printout. But then, the attention began to shift. Not from the VIPs, but from the staff, receptionists, porters, interns, the ones who had seen Preston pacing, glaring, acting like he owned the place. Kevin leaned in, whispering, "Hey, you okay?" Malik gave a soft nod. "They don't want me here," he replied quietly. But Preston wasn't finished. He stepped back toward the velvet rope, set his glass down, and waited until a few people glanced over, then launched the next strike. "Hey, who's head of security here?" he said loudly enough for nearby staff to hear. "I just saw that guy touch the rolls." Every eye turned instantly. Daniel, the manager, hurried out of his office. "What's going on?" "That guy," Preston said, pointing at Malik. "I saw him lean over the velvet rope. His hand touched the hood. I swear, probably checking for fingerprints to plan something." Kevin shot halfway out of his chair. "That's not true," he said quickly. "He hasn't even left this table. He's been sitting next to me this whole time." But Daniel hesitated. Because Preston was loud, rich, and dressed like every word he said carried weight. Daniel turned to Malik and looked him in the eye. "Is that true?" Malik didn't move. Didn't rise. Didn't beg. He simply said, "I've been sitting here the whole time. Check the cameras. Preston sneered. Or maybe the cameras didn't catch it. Guys like that know how to move when no one's watching. The room went quiet, unnervingly quiet. Kevin looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. A female employee near the coffee bar whispered. Did he really just say that? Daniel's jaw clenched. We'll need to pause the purchase process for a moment, he told Kevin. I'm going to have someone review the footage. Malik exhaled a barely audible breath. You can pause it if you want, he said. But I won't defend myself just because a rich man shouted a lie. Preston crossed his arms. Come on, really? You walk in here in a hoodie, hanging around million-dollar cars, and expect nobody to question it. Malik slowly turned. I didn't ask you a thing. I didn't speak to you. And I certainly didn't touch your car. Daniel raised a hand, trying to calm things down. Gentlemen, let's not escalate. We'll get this clarified shortly. But the damage had been done. Other customers were watching now. One pulled out their phone to start recording. A woman quietly pulled her child closer and stepped away. Kevin looked at Malik, clearly shaken. They'll check the footage. Everything will be cleared up. Malik just gave a quiet nod. But Preston wasn't done yet. He walked over to the front desk, leaned down, and spoke 2 words that changed the entire atmosphere of the room. Call security. It's him. He shouted as the front doors opened. He's the one I told you about. He touched the rolls, shady behavior. You better handle it before he disappears. 2 uniformed security guards entered the showroom, hands near their belts, dead serious. The laughter stopped. The showroom fell silent. Malik rose slowly. No panic. No sudden movements. He simply placed his hands calmly behind his back and looked them in the eye. The taller guard spoke. Sir, we've received a report of suspicious activity. We need you to step outside with us. Kevin nearly leapt from his seat. No. He's with me. He hasn't done anything wrong. I've been helping him with financing this whole time. But Preston cut in. He stepped between the guards and Malik, pointing once again. I saw him touch the Rolls-Royce. He's been circling that car all day like he's plotting something. If you wait until he steals it, it'll be too late. Daniel, the manager, stood frozen in a corner, saying nothing. The 2 officers stepped forward again. The taller one repeated, Sir, we're not here to argue. Step outside. Now. Malik blinked slowly, inhaled deeply. And just as he began to turn to comply, a voice rang out from the far end of the room. Step away from him. Everyone turned. The crowd parted. A man walked out from the luxury section, no tie under his blazer, light brown trousers, composed gait, clipboard in hand. He wasn't a security guard. He wasn't a cop. But every employee in the showroom immediately straightened at the sight of him. Daniel's face drained of color. He recognized the man but didn't seem to know what to say. The man walked calmly, as if he had been watching the whole thing unfold. He looked at Malik, then turned to the officers. You're about to arrest the wrong man. The taller officer frowned. And who exactly are you, sir? The man didn't answer right away. He reached into his blazer and pulled out a thin black folder, handing it to the officer. The officer read it, his eyebrows lifted. His posture shifted. He looked at Malik. Then at the document again. Only then did the man speak, clearly, calmly, and with finality. This man, Mr. Malik Barnes, is the majority stakeholder of this entire dealership chain. He's not here to buy a car today, he's here to observe. The air seemed to vanish from the room. Preston let out a shaky, awkward laugh. Wait, what? Kevin dropped the pen in his hand. Daniel's face turned bright red, his eyes darting frantically. Malik said nothing. He simply looked at Preston, a long, steady, penetrating gaze. You approached me with arrogance, made up lies, called the police, all because I looked at a car you thought I had no right to admire. Preston stammered. I didn't know exactly. Malik cut him off. You didn't know. But you acted like you did. The officer who had nearly cuffed Malik gave a slight nod of apology. The man with the clipboard turned to Daniel. We'll be having a private conversation later. Then he turned back to Malik. "Sir, would you like us to escort this gentleman out?" Malik looked Preston up and down. "No need," he said. He just escorted himself out. Preston stood frozen, face flushed, sweat breaking through the surface of his designer mask of confidence. No one spoke, a silence so sharp, every breath felt like weight. He looked at Malik. Then at the door. And finally, at the floor. Because in that moment, it hit him. He had never controlled the room. Not once. Malik didn't move. He didn't gloat. But he looked directly at the man who, just minutes earlier, had tried to have him thrown out. "You wanted me to feel small. You wanted me to question myself. You wanted me to shrink the moment you raised your voice. But I've spent my whole life shrinking for people like you. Not anymore." Preston opened his mouth, perhaps to speak. But no words came out. At that moment, the executive stepped forward and nodded to the guards. "Escort him out. Flag his ID. From this moment on, he's permanently banned from every Sterling Auto location." The entire room watched as Preston was led past the same velvet rope he once stood beside like a gatekeeper. Now it was just a reminder of a world he thought he controlled. Until it turned its back on him. Someone in the corner whispered, "That's what privilege sounds like, when it crumbles." Malik didn't speak another word to Preston. There was nothing left to say. But his eyes shifted to Daniel, the manager. Daniel's face was pale, his eyes darting like a man praying to disappear into the floor. "You know what makes you worse than him?" Malik asked. Daniel flinched. He lied to feel powerful. "But you knew it was wrong. And you stayed silent." The room remained quiet. All you had to do was ask one question. You didn't. All you had to do was stand up. You wouldn't. Daniel swallowed hard. The executive behind Malik spoke in a tone like cold steel. "You are hereby suspended, effective immediately. We'll be reviewing your termination within 24 hours. Leave your badge at the front desk." Daniel didn't argue. "I understand," he murmured. He quietly unclipped his name badge and placed it down. No eye contact, no words, only silence and regret. Malik turned to Kevin, who still hadn't dared to breathe. "You tried," Malik said. "That matters." Kevin blinked. "But I didn't do enough." Malik nodded. "Next time, do more. Not just for someone like me, but for anyone standing alone in the room." Kevin nodded firmly. The executive stepped beside Malik. "If you're ready, sir, we'll take you upstairs to finalize the paperwork." Malik didn't answer immediately. He turned and looked around, at the cars, the showroom, the people who had all just witnessed the truth. Then he said, "I came here to buy a car. But I'm leaving with the truth. This place didn't need a new inventory. It needed a reckoning." The next morning, the headlines didn't mention a sale. They mentioned a shift. Black investor profiled at dealership, turns out he secretly owns the brand. The clip went viral. But it wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It was just a man, falsely accused, calmly saying, "You think I don't belong here? I own the floor you're standing on." And just like that, the world flipped. Backhand index pointing right. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful real stories like this one.